Hey guys, I'm Aditya Thakur and welcome to another video in our Python series. In this video, we will look at data types in Python and take up the basics of integers, float, and complex numbers. We'll also see what are all the default data types and how can you check the type of a variable in Python. Newton School is a platform which prepares. This video is brought to you by Newton School. It is a platform which prepares you for your career in tech. It has courses designed for freshers, working professionals, and also for women with no tech background. Newton School trains you for 6 months and helps you become an amazing full stack developer, has a network of 300 great companies. And the best part is that at Newton School, you have a pay after placement program. So you don't have to pay anything until and unless you are placed with the minimum 5 lakh CTC. About the Launchpad, it is an initiative by Newton School for people who want to start coding from scratch and learn the basics of different programming languages for absolutely free of cost. And this video would also be available on the Launchpad section of Newton School, where you can practice several quizzes and assignments related to the course. And without any further delay, let's get started with data types in Python. So what are data types? In the last video, we took up what are variables. Variables are basically named memory locations. And if you haven't seen that video, you can check it out using the I button on top. And again, data types are the types of values that you would store in these boxes. As in, we had a box which was given a variable name. It was storing certain value. So what is the type of that value being stored there? That is basically what we mean by a data type. So there are a few built-in data types in Python. Python has a text type which is string. So if I am storing certain text in that box, it would be of type string. And there are some numeric type data types like int, float, complex. So if I were to store a number 5 or 2 in the same box, in the same variable, then that variable would be of type integer, or it could be of type float or complex. And we'll look at the differences between these different data types as we go on with the video. But there are also sequence type, which is a list, tuple, range. So list, as the name suggests, stores a list of all the different it can store a list of fruits, as in, let's say, oranges, mangoes, apples, and such stuff. So we'll also look at what is the difference, but for now what you need to know, like what all are the different data types. So again, we had the text, which was only storing the text. We have numbers. For numbers, we have the numeric type, integer, float, complex. And then we have the sequence, which stores like a list. It could be like list of fruits or something like that. There is also tuple and range. Then we have the mapping type, which are dictionaries. It is a key value pair. We'll again come back to dictionaries in a future video. We have set types, boolean types. Boolean is basically true or false. We use booleans to store either a true value or a false value. So it has only bool under it. And there are also binary types, bytes, byte array, and memory view. So these are all the built-in data types in Python. Then we want to know what is the data type of a particular variable. So we can use the type function. Instead of just explaining it in theory, let's take it to code. So to use the IDE, you'll have to go over to newtonschool.com, newtonschool.co. And here, if you haven't created an account, then you can go over to sign up. But since I already have an account, I'll just log in. So once you log in, you have to go over to the playground in your profile and go down to algorithm playground. So here I have the different editors open, but what you can do is you can create a new playground. Simply give it a name, give it a title. I'll go with Python, and also give it a description. So I'll just type in playground and create it. So this opens up to a code view where you can write code, give it a custom input, and also you have standard output. Any error that you might have and any messages will be displayed here. So let's get started with the code. We saw in the last video how we were declaring an integer variable. So we were writing int num equals to 5. Or instead of going like this, what we can do is write down a variable. Like I'll just write in name and give it a value, Aditya, right? And then I'll type in the print name. Okay, that's it. But you would notice like it is not being colored, nothing is happening here. So that is because we haven't selected a compiler. Whenever you come to this IDE, you have to select the compiler you want to compile this code in. So since we are working with Python, we will go with Python 3. And here we have it. So I would write name, give it a certain value, like I'll go with my name, and I'll just print name. A very simple code. If I run it now, it should print Aditya to console. Right, we have it here, printed to console. Okay, now what I want to do is, if there is a variable and I want to know the type of that variable, what is the type of value that you're storing, it might come in use in the future if you want to know like what is the type of value being returned by a certain variable. So you can use the type function. And how do we do that? We wrap the variable with the type. So I'll type in type and pass name as its parameter. Now if I run it, it should print like it is of class string. I can simply change it like this, as in instead of passing a string, I'll just pass in a number. So you would notice like it has become of class integer. So this is how you know the type of a variable in Python. Now what happens if now you can also specify the data type. The data type is that is, you can assign a value to the variable and also set the data type. If you want to specify the data type, you can use the following constructors, as in int. You can give it an integer, float, you can make it like this. Now before we go over the specific data type, we need to know the differences between the three numeric data types. So I will come to the specific data type in the end. Let's first go over like the Python numbers, right? So there are three numeric types in Python. There is integer, float, and complex. Integer is basically like 1, 2, 3 or simple numbers, and float is as you can see in the example 2.8. So it stores the decimal values. And then there is the last complex type, which is complex numbers basically. So integer or int is a whole number, a positive or negative number without decimals of unlimited length. So you can have a whole number, positive or negative. As you can see in the examples, integer x could be 1. You can also have a number like this long positive number, and you can also have a negative number that is like 3255 negative of this. So all these variables, if you'll assign these values, you will find that they are of type integer. Then there is the float data type. So float or floating point number is a number, positive or negative, containing one or more decimals. So float can also be scientific, as in you can also use numbers indicate and e to indicate the power of 10. So in the examples, like we have 1.10, we have 35e3, and then there is also minus 35.59. So all these examples are of type float. Then there is the last one, which is complex. Complex numbers are written with the j as the imaginary part. So these numbers have a real and an imaginary part. So we can use 3 plus 5j, 5j or minus 5j. All these are complex. And if you will run this and print the type, so it would show complex. Okay, so that brings us to how to specify the data type of a given variable. So let's go back to our IDE again, and let's do that, right? So there was this number which was having which was saving 5. So if I'll just try to print the type of this number, it should return like class int. Okay, so again, now if I copy this code and make this 5.5 and again try to run it, what you will see is this second number is of type float, right? And one more time, if I copy this and just go with the j, right? Let's try to run it. Okay, so we have all three data types printed to console. We have integer, float, and complex. Now what you would notice is like we are using the same variable to save this. Let's also see for e once. E3. Right. So e is for the float type. As I mentioned that we can use the scientific numbers with an e to indicate the power of 10. And we have all these different numbers. They are all being stored in this num variable, right? So I'll get rid of the complex and this one for now. But what you will notice is my number was initially of type integer, and when I assigned the float value to it, it became of type float, right? As in it was first belonging to class integer and then became of type float when I assigned the different value. Now in the specific data type, what we do is the data type is set when we assign the value to a variable. So if you want to specify these type of data, we can use like constructors like float, constructor functions like this. And how I can do this is, if I wanted the num to be only of class float, I would write something like float and inside bracket put this 5. So now if I run it, this became of class float. So that is how we can specify the data type of the num variable, because if you were to assign only 5 to the num value, the Python compiler would think that it is of type integer. But if you wanted it to be specifically float, then you can use the constructor function float to assign it to make it of data type float only. And lastly, we have the type conversion. So we can also convert one type to another with the integer, float, and complex methods. If you want to convert one value to other, you can use these methods to convert them, as we saw in this. So let's take a number num equals to 5 and print this number, right? So if I were to create a new variable called flow and I wanted this num to be of type float, then I can both print and also print the type of these values. Okay, now if I run this program now, Let us wait on it to compile. And what you'll notice is that our number num, to which I had assigned 5, was is printed to console, and it is of type integer. But what I can do is I can do type conversion, convert one type to other. So I converted this num2 of type floating, and you can see like I was printing the type of this new variable flow, and it is of type float. So that is about it. You can there are different data types that we looked at in this video. There are for strings, list, and everything. There are data types in Python that you can use. Then we looked at like the basics for numbers, as in what is the difference between integer, float, and complex, and how you can specify data types, and lastly how you can convert them. In this video, we only covered numbers. What I'll do is I'll take up strings and other data types in separate videos, because there are certain operations that I need to show you. So we'll take it up in the future videos. So if you haven't already, do subscribe the channel and hit the notification bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload that video. And thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, you can check out other courses on Newton School and enroll in them for free. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.